All right, A to Z Sports. It's the Titan postgame live here. Sam Phelan and Easton Freeze wrapping up a Titans loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. Final score 27-17. The Titans finished with that number, 17 points, which seems to be the meme that just keeps on happening and recurring here. Decent amount to get into. We'll keep it relatively fast for this post-game show because while there are some things we have to talk about, Easton, I think the moral of the story coming out of this game is that this is a relatively expected style of loss for the Titans, and what we've learned about this Titans team, what we know about the Chargers and how they've played football in 2024. We'll grade Will Levis. We'll get into our X factors, and we'll get a vibe of how all of you are feeling after this Titans loss. But Easton, first, tell everybody what they got to do. You are muted, sir.
Hello. Gotta like the show, folks. Do a better job than me to start the show here. Like the show. I know nobody's in a good mood here, but help us out. Give us a thumbs up. It is the least you can do. It's very helpful to us, and we'll get off and rolling here after everybody likes the show right now. Perfect. Thank you.
All right, everybody's liking the show, and while you do that, I'm telling you about our partners coming in the door here. They're X Golf Nashville, now in Murfreesboro as well, the home of indoor golf in Middle Tennessee. X Golf, play, train, and entertain at playxgolf.com. BetMGM, log in today to get your Pro Football Boost Pack to acquire tokens for more winnings. BetMGM is an official partner of the Tennessee Titans. And TDOT, be part of the solution to end littering and make sure that nobody trashes Tennessee. Tennessee might be trash, but you can make sure that nobody trashes Tennessee by visiting nobodytrashestennessee.com. Easton,
Seen this movie before. Seen this movie.
Yeah, I mean, that is ultimately what it feels like, right? I mean, there were some good, there were some things to like, there was, bits and pieces that you felt okay, but it was just not a very good Titans team that made special teams errors at critical moments, that had offensive line issues at critical moments. The quarterback took sacks at some pivotal moments, and then the defense, when it really mattered in the second half, couldn't stand up and, make a stop. And so here we are with another game. The Titans get outplayed in the second half. The game gets out of hand rather quickly. You exchange field goals for touchdowns. And before you knew it, you looked up and it was out of reach.
Yeah, I've got an impromptu question for you and I to answer and for the chat to answer for us here. We didn't talk about this, but I think this is the best way for us to tuck into this game. Like you said, not super shocking the way that this happened. So I want to whittle down what was the most disappointing part of this loss. What about the way that this happened? Because I think some of it is disappointing on its face, but given the context of the Titans season, it's like, I don't know how to be super disappointed by that because it's what keeps happening. No, so what's the thing that you were most surprised by? What's the thing that was most disappointing to you in this loss?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of issues with some of the play calling that goes on in the second half of these games. I find it puzzling at times. That would be number one, but I think ultimately why I feel this game is somewhat disappointing is the fact that the game was within reach. Like, the team played well enough to win. This didn't feel like, well enough to win is all relative here. But what I mean by that is this was not a game like the Detroit game where I was like, you are mismatched here. This is a team that is just going to kick you to the curb.
Sure.
I didn't feel like the Chargers were a much better talent-wise football team. It just felt like the Chargers executed the simple things better and easier. And so it was a Titans team that I think was worse coached, that was less disciplined, that had worse offensive line play, that didn't make the plays in the critical moments and set themselves back. And so when you feel like you are in a football game and you have a chance to win a game, when some things do go well and then you can't find a way to capitalize on it, and it feels like we are watching the same movie every Sunday, I get that there is some disappointment and some frustration. I would agree with you, though. I think it's some of the reaction has surprised me a little bit, just in the sense of like, I don't think anybody really expected anybody to win this game. As a matter of fact, we came in here, did final score predictions. You had the Titans winning with a, albeit admittedly optimistic point of view.
Optimism for the sake of optimism.
Right? Yeah, but everybody in the chat was kind of coming in expecting a loss, and you got a Titans loss in which they scored 17 points. Okay.
Right. Exactly. seeing a lot of people in the comments, by the way, talking in maybe rejoicing really about the Titans draft stock, because if you are all in on the tank, that was not just a good loss for the Titans for you, but a good Sunday overall. A couple of key things happened for you.
Well, I just refreshed tankathon.com and I saw the Titans go from 6th to 3rd. So they are currently slotted to pick 3rd overall in the NFL draft.
Well, and they're only behind, if you're looking at it from a who gets the number 1 overall pick, they're only behind the Jaguars and the Giants. And the only reason they're behind those two teams is because they have played one more game each than the Titans. The Jags and the Giants both at 2-8, the Titans at 2-7. Of course, the Titans play the Jaguars twice, so they completely control their destiny in terms of that team. The Giants, obviously, are just going to have to hope that Danny Dimes and company manage a win or two here down the stretch more than the Titans get. For me, to answer my own question, what was the most disappointing thing for me? For the second time in 3 games, I'm excluding the Patriots game because I didn't feel this way after that game. But if you're looking at the Lions game, if you're looking at this game, really disappointed in the defensive effort. And I know that there were a lot of things that made it difficult on them. For example, on the field, a lot of that game. I mean, when the Chargers are just grinding down the field 95 yards for an eventual touchdown in the second half, and they're out there for 5 minutes again, you just feel for those guys because you know they're exhausted and they've been on the field so long already today. Ultimately, the time possession ended up evening out. That's because the Titans got a lot of garbage time possession there at the end. But it certainly felt like the Titans defense on the field for an insurmountable amount of time, especially as this game grew late. There's also the fact that for another game, the special teams unit sets them up at least once in a really difficult situation, allowing a 56-yard kick return. You thought the Titans would get through a game with clean kick return coverage. Absolutely not. Not so fast, my friend.
After a score too, right? And that's
right. That's right.
And it was an example of what Brian Callahan had talked about and was very frustrated by about that Lions game, was the idea of one good thing happens and then immediately bad thing that offsets whatever good thing just happened.
Totally.
And it was a nice drive by the Titans overall to open the second half. It ends kind of in a disappointing fashion with, some questionable play call and then just questionable effort from Josh Wiley on a fade. And you're just kind of like, okay, that was gross, but okay, we'll take the points. Immediate 60-yard return on a kickoff that gives the Chargers a short field. And that has sort of been something Titans fans are used to. So I'm sure people are ready, chomping at the bit to get after this one. I won't waste any more time. Give me your one word. What is one word to describe this Titans loss to the Chargers? What is one word to describe this Titans loss to the Chargers? While you guys are sounding off, I'm going to tell you guys about T-Dot, our friends over at T-Dot. Nobody trashes Tennessee, as we try and look for this guy here. There we are. Nobody trashes Tennessee. Be part of the solution to end littering at nobodytrashestennessee.com. Did you know there's over 88 million pieces of litter on Tennessee's roadways right now? It's a problem, and we can all be part of the solution. T-Dot spends over $23 million each year cleaning up litter, but they can't do it alone. You can help by making simple changes like stop littering, picking up litter when you see it, and joining local cleanups. $23 million on litter. That's a waste of $23 million, almost like L'Jarius Sneed, right? Like that is
all right. Hey,
it was right there.
He's more than that. He's more than that.
It was right there. Tennessee needs all of us to step up. So be part of the solution today to help keep Tennessee beautiful. Visit nobodytrashestennessee.com to get involved and see how you can make a difference. Easton, I will send you to the chat. One word to describe this loss.
Let's see what the people are saying here. For this game, the people are saying, and again, apologies to our Facebook users who are still anonymous. We think this is a Facebook issue. We'll see if we can get it fixed this week. Usual, embarrassing, expected, Levis, predictable, typical, tank in all caps, fatal, predictable, screen, stagnant, coaching, same, outgunned, more tanks that I won't throw up there, but a lot of tanks, stampede, indifference, a lot of expected. Expected is easily the number one word of the year. I have seen expected every week a million times. Let's get a little creative and get away from expected, folks. Seen so many expecteds. We get it. 17 says DeMario, always appropriate. Decrepit. And then seeing some players' names, like Sanders is the one word for this. I saw a moment ago somebody else, here's Shadur. Saw somebody else say Travis. I'm sure there's a Ward in here if I go digging far enough. So there you go. Those are your one words from the chat. Sam, my one word is the word that I used to describe this experience in the chat with Austin and you a moment ago. Apathetic. And if I can make a compound word out of it, apathy inducing. That's what this game was for me. I'm somebody that is sick in the head and does not get bored by the Titans ever. I eat it all up. I think people that know me know this, that, preseason, off season, everything, just all the grimy little details of what like super fans dig into. I can get excited about it. And even when the Titans are bad, I'm typically still fully invested. This was the first game in a while where I thought myself, I know this is bad for us, it's bad for business, but I'm just being honest with the people here. First time where I felt like just yawning at this team, man. Because it's not even new bad. It's the same bad. It's the same movie every single week. And the deficiencies that keep them from getting over the hurdle that it doesn't seem like they're capable of fixing in season, and they probably need another player acquisition cycle to address, continue to rear their ugly head. And so it just makes me apathetic.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. I will kind of go similar, right? And I'll get slightly creative with my word, but my word that came to mind was redundant. This is, like you said, the same style of loss that we have seen, and really the flaws of the team that reared its ugly head today are the same flaws of this team that have been popping up. And it's unfortunate. It is apathy inducing. It is frustrating. It is boring. It is all of those things, but it is also reality. And I have said this, and perhaps one word I could use is vindicating, because one thing that I have said is I don't believe this team is like a quarterback away. I don't believe they're a quarterback and a right tackle away. I think there are a lot of issues with
they're a quarterback, a right tackle, and an edge rush away.
A quarterback, a right tackle, an edge rusher, an inside linebacker.
No, I legitimately think they are a quarterback, a right tackle, and an edge rusher away. So my opinion is that they are those three things away. You think it's more than that?
When I watch a game like this, I watch like deficiencies that pop up on all three sides of the ball and all three phases where this team is not good enough. I don't think one edge rusher, like they pressured pretty well for like the beginning part of this game. They didn't get home, but Herbert was uncomfortable.
I was about to say they just flushed him out of the pocket and then he ran all over them. Like,
well, that's not on year for the Titans. Not on your pass rush, though. I mean,
it's a little bit on your pass rush. You got to contain as well as you pressure. I mean, it's not 100% on the pass rush, but if you get behind the guy, you're not affecting anything besides.
I mean, this is two straight games now that the Titans have affected the quarterback with their edge rushers a decent amount, and said quarterbacks just run all over them. And like step up, there's nobody. So maybe you're on your interior defensive line too. It's on your middle linebackers. It's on, your nickel. It's on everybody that's in that second level of the defense. I watch the same deficiencies pop up where they're getting penalized for the same stuff. And I feel like this team has a lot of things that they need to do. And who knows if they can do it in one player acquisition cycle. If they're going to try and do it in one more player acquisition cycle, it means they can't miss. So redundant because, like you said, seen the movie before, and that's ultimately where my head is at after that loss. But I do want to talk a little bit about the quarterback.
Please.
Because coming into the game, I think Will Levis was the biggest story. It was what everybody wanted to see, what everybody wanted to talk about. And I would be remiss if we got through this postgame show and just said same old Titans without actually talking about Will Levis. I think there was some good. I think there was some bad. I think this will be interesting. It really will be interesting.
Let's grade the quarterback.
Let's grade the quarterback. Let's like the show. And then let me know.
Guys, hang on. Time out for likes. We got to call a timeout on the show. I see the like numbers. We got to let's not be the Titans out here. Let's step up a little bit. Let's like the show. As we've mentioned, Sam and I get fired if you don't like the show. So like the show, please. Thank you.
Like the show, and then let us know, how do you grade Will Levis's performance today in the Titans loss to the Chargers? He finished the day 18 of 23 passing with 175 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 41 yards on the ground, hooked up with Calvin Ridley well. 5 catches for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns for Calvin Ridley. Passer rating of 127.4. And then the big number, of course, is the fact that Levis was sacked 7 times in the game. So some good, some bad. Where do you ultimately fall in line? Easton, go to the chat. How do you grade Will Levis's performance?
Yeah, I'm seeing a C- and a C here from Zoe Almighty, a B- from Facebook, B+ from Mike Peck, a little bit kinder there, a B from G, a C- from Jason Clark, a C- from Curtis as well, a D+ from Facebook user, grading a little bit of a harsher scale there. C, C, and C from Henry, Jerry, and Hammer. So we're living in that. We're living in that C, B- range for folks. A couple of D's in there. So I'd say the anecdotal average here from the chat is like a flat C for Will Levis in this game.
Is that where you are?
You go first, because I want to wait to give mine.
I would go with a B-. I would. Okay. I think Will Levis was overall fairly good in this game. I think he held on to the ball too long. I think, you and I texted a little bit, but like how he maneuvered in the pocket, which I have some pros and cons for. I thought he did a really good job avoiding pressure the first time pressure comes. He does a good job of stepping up in the pocket well. What I think Will struggles with is knowing where the secondary rush is coming from once he steps up. He has a way of dropping back. He can feel the pressure coming around his blind side or right in front of him and then step up, but then kind of freezes when he steps up and he's holding the ball, and then it leads to him getting hit kind of and how he moves in the pocket. So I think he was efficient, obviously 18 of 23 passing, which is what you're looking for out of your quarterback, a high completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, even though one of them was in garbage time at the end. I think we kind of got robbed of Levis a little bit in the first half. He didn't have a huge chance to do a lot because of how little opportunity they actually got into the offense. I was a little bit frustrated, to be honest, with Brian Callahan not letting Levis just throw the ball and doing a lot of like screens and runs in the second half when that stuff was bottled up and you were needing to create more explosives. I would have liked to see more of Will Levis just throwing, but he didn't make a mistake with his arm all day. I didn't feel like I really do not have a single throw that I can think of where I thought he made a questionable decision with his arm. I think that's a big positive and a big step in the right direction. I think he knew when to tuck and run and did a nice job picking up some first downs with his legs. Slided for the most part. The big criticism coming out of this game is going to be holding the ball too long, taking sacks, and how that affected you. I think that's a fair knock. But I still think it falls somewhere in like the B- range. I wouldn't be mad at a C+, but I'll go B-.
I am really struggling with how to grade him in this game because there's a good deal of what you just said that I agree with. And everyone in the chat knows that you and I are the resident Levis supporters here at A to Z. Many a time this year, I've been on this post-game show defending Levis against Austin and the entire horde of the comments. So I am somebody that is apt to defend him when I feel so. And you're right that it was a very different Levis performance in the sense that he didn't really make the mistake with his arm. He didn't make the questionable, reckless decision. And yet, I'm inclined to give him a flat C. And I think if you take out the opening drive, obviously you can't do this, but just for where to understand where I'm coming from here. If you take out the opening drive and you take out the drive where they should have scored and then the right tackle blew up and then they couldn't make a field goal, those 2 drives, the 2 successful drives in the first half, I'm tempted to give him an F. He was a disaster in the second half. By far the worst ball I've seen Levis play this year. By far the most frustrated I've been with Will Levis this year. I hated the way that he played in the second half. And you're right. And people in the chat that I've seen have said this so far are right that pretty much his only knock today is his pocket mobility, pocket awareness, and how long he held onto the ball. But that's a massive knock. It was unplayable and unexcusable the way that he played in terms of his pocket awareness, pocket mobility, and how long he held onto the ball in the second half. We're having the numbers still come out right now, but
at least
at one point in the game,
sacks in the second half were coverage sacks. I think that's
fine.
crazy.
But he has an object permanence problem, Sam, because when a rusher goes speed to power and gets behind him, in Will Levis's mind, there are 10 players on the field. Like, he forgets that guys can come up behind. Like, his awareness of the people around him is easily his worst trait, in my opinion. His pocket mobility and his pocket awareness stink right now. He held onto the ball so long in this game. I'm going to wait to see the final number at the end of the game, but at one point in the third quarter, I looked, and on the sacks so far in the game to that point, he had held the ball 4.65 seconds on each of those sacks. He's trying to hold on to the ball for 5 seconds, Sam. You can't do that. You cannot do that in the NFL. You have to run or throw it away.
This is a crazy take. This is a crazy take.
I don't think it is.
Dude, they had 4 possessions in the second half.
Yes.
They had a good drive that was a field goal drive that he let the opening drive of the second half. They went down, kicked a field goal.
Sure.
They had the last drive, which was a touchdown drive. So they scored on half. They went and scored. They went 9 plays, 61 yards.
Down 17 against a team playing prevent.
Okay, but you're not. So you just said it was his worst play of the year. The worst.
The collective second half of that game was the worst half.
You said it was horrific. They went down and scored a touchdown. Right. And then in the 2 drives that they did not score, so there were 2 possessions there. Otherwise, one of those drives was back-to-back coverage sacks that Levis was very wise to put the ball in his pocket because of back-to-back coverage sacks.
When you say coverage sacks, I understand what you mean. The fact that you don't, and again, we don't know actually until we see all 22, but we're assuming based on the way he acted, nobody was open. But what does he do on those coverage sacks, Sam? Is he taking off quickly enough to try to get yards downfield? Is he throwing the ball away when a sack is inevitable? He's not doing the things you need to do when there is a coverage sack impending.
He took off for 41 rushing yards today. Like I don't.
We're not talking about when he got downfield,
but I don't think his inability.
2 of those were designed runs that were very successful. So that's conflate. I think you're conflating the idea that he escaped the pocket well with the number of total rushing yards he had.
So the 2 drives that they did not score in the second half, because they only had 2 possessions that they did not score. It was a run by Pollard. Levis passed to Nick Westbrook-Akine for a first down around midfield. He was then sacked for a loss. He completed a ball that was gained only 1 yard, and then he was sacked again by Bosa. That was the drive with back-to-back coverage sacks that ended the third quarter. They then got the ball back, and it was a Pollard run for 4 yards, a Levis scramble for 8 yards and a first down. Then the Bud Dupree sack, the Bud Dupree tackle for loss on a blown-up screen pass, which I think was
both Bud Dupree sacks were embarrassing.
Which I think was an absolutely disgusting. So there was a sack from Levis there, a disgusting play call from Callahan on 2nd and 16. That was a screen pass to Tajay Spears after a false start on his offensive line that lost 7 yards. And then he was sacked again in what was already a 3rd and 23. That possession is not on Will Levis when you have a false start and a loss of 7 on a screen. I think that is absolutely ridiculous to call a second half that was 1 possession that was on his offensive line, a touchdown drive and a field goal drive, and then 1 possession that they get to midfield and he got sacked. And even if you want to put those sacks on him, that is not the worst football Will Levis has played all year. And I think it's honestly kind of ridiculous from Titans fans in general, from you, from everybody, because everybody loves to do this with Will Levis. You like to bitch and moan.
How are you lumping me with everybody when I have gone to bat for him all year, Sam? I'm not allowed to finally say I was upset with something. I'm not allowed to do that.
To bitch and moan when he throws an interception or he makes a decision or he throws the ball into coverage. And then before watching all 22, before seeing what was open for him, we're going to sit here and say he was horrific and played the worst football of the year because he took a couple of sacks in the second half when he was in the pocket and did not make a mistake because
he held the ball for 5 seconds. You can't do that over and over and over. I bet you anything, Sam. We get to the podium tomorrow with Brian Callahan, and he offers up the fact that Will Levis held on the ball way too long, unacceptable. How he operated in the second half in the pocket. unacceptable. It was.
And I think he's also going to say he did a really good job staying efficient, high completion percentage. You know, he saw a lot of progress from Will Levis.
That's why I gave Will Levis a C.
Well, and that's why you said it was his worst half of football he's ever played.
I do believe the second half was not ever played. I mean, so far this season, it was the single half of football that I have seen from Levis this season where I have been genuinely displeased with everything he did. I didn't think he did a single really good thing in the second half. Not a single thing.
I think that's crazy.
No, that's a lie. That's a lie. One.
There
was one tight window past NWI that was good in the second half. Everything else was
really good. That was a really good throw.
That was a really nice throw.
He opened the second half on that drive. He made that throw on a drive that he went all the way down the field, making passes that drove them down the field where they almost scored and then ended up kicking a field goal. He made a beautiful throw at the end of the second half, a touchdown pass to Calvin Ridley. He scrambled for first down.
I don't want to talk about that last drive. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy to talk about the last drive.
When there are 4 possessions in the second half
in the world, the Chargers are already mentally in their homes asleep, enjoying their W.
They had 4 possessions in the second half. I think Will Levis was fine to very good on 3 of 4 of them. One of them, he was bad in holding the ball too long.
Repeat that. Fine to very good on 3 of 4 possessions in the second half.
Correct.
Oh, I think that's crazy. I think that's crazy. You can say he was fine on 2 at most.
Score on half of your drives in the NFL, you can't ask for much more than that.
Hey, hang on. You're the one talking about how we're making these sweeping judgments about how Will Levis play without reviewing the tape. But now you want to talk about they scored, so that means he was good? That's so reductive.
What do you mean?
You just a moment ago, you were like, it's crazy that everyone wants to bitch and moan without reviewing the tape about Will Levis and seeing what it actually looked like tomorrow morning. But now here you are saying, well, they scored on 2 of the drives, so he must have been good on 2 of the drives.
No, I'm saying you are associating your only reason, because you cannot point to a bad throw that he made, and you cannot point to a bad decision he made with his arm.
I said these things. Don't straw
man
me.
I understand that. So the only thing that you have to label Will Levis as an extreme example of like, this was the worst half of football he's played all season is the fact that he was sacked 4 times in the second half, that he took 4 sacks. And yet, admittedly, you have no idea if his players were open on those 4 sacks. And so I ask you,
I don't need to know if they were open. They could have been perfectly covered on every play. It still makes what he did wrong.
Incorrect.
No. Good quarterbacks don't sit in the pocket for 5 seconds, have object permanence problems where they forget rushers are behind them, get themselves killed, wait too long to take off, wait too long to throw the ball away. Not good quarterbacks. He
stepped up in the pocket twice on balls that he was also sacked in, looking downfield, waiting for somebody to get open.
The rusher went speed right past him and then came back and murdered him. He steps up and then forgets the guy exists. Good quarterbacks don't do that. And not only did he do it, he did it over and over again in the same game.
I'm not saying it wasn't a problem. I'm not saying it was something that he couldn't have done better, but I don't think that's...
It's a disqualifying problem. It's a massive problem.
It's
a single problem big enough to disqualify you in a game.
On the floor. He never put the ball on the floor, getting hit from behind. He did a great job of ball security.
Yes.
So, sacks happen. I don't know I think this is crazy when you know how bad this offensive line is. When you know that some of these are occurring, by the way, on 3rd and 27.
The broadcast said it, and it was the only thing the broadcast said all day long that they were right about. The broadcast was horrible, by the way. The only thing they said all day long that they were right about was the fact that Will Levis was hanging his offensive line out to dry in the second half. He absolutely was. This offensive line was giving him time.
What about his offensive
giving him room. He was able to step up over and over, and he didn't make anything of it.
And what about his offensive line hanging him out to dry when they got a false start and then let a screen get absolutely blown up and putting him in a 3rd and 20?
Yeah, they suck too. In those instances where they're making dumb mental mistakes, they're a problem. On the plays where they're blocking well, they're not the problem. I don't think this shouldn't be hard.
But you are taking literally 1 drive.
2 drives.
Well, one of those drives
the middle
completely on the offensive line.
Disagree.
It was a
hang on.
The result of 7. What do you mean?
The result of the drive. But on that drive, the play of Levis was bad. What he ultimately did was not as bad as what the offensive line did because they set them behind the sticks. I understand what you're saying, but his play was just as bad on that 1 drive.
They were in a 2nd and 11 after Will Levis scrambled for a first down And then they were in a 2nd and 11 on midfield. They got a false start and a blown up screen that put them in a 3rd and 23 back at their own 30-yard line. What of that is in Levis's control? That is J.C. Latham and the Titans wide receiver blocking on whatever on the screen.
I'll be honest. It's very hard. It's very hard to follow you just reading out plays. I'm gonna have to go look at this for myself here.
Levis scrambles for a first down. He then gets sacked on a play, but he gets back to the line of scrimmage. So it's a 2nd and 11 or a long 10. And they go false start on J.C. Latham, screen to Tajay Spears, loss of 7, immediately 3rd and 23 from their own 30. That killed that drive. Not
Agreed.
Will Levis, the offensive line play there. That lost them 12 yards in the down and distance and made it impossible for them to keep that drive alive. So if that drive is now on the offensive line, Will Levis has scored a field goal without taking a sack on one of those drives, scored a touchdown without taking a sack on one of those drives. You are taking one drive and saying this was the worst half of football he's played all year, which I think is just asinine. I think it's crazy.
Okay, so a couple of things here, and we can go back and forth on this all day. First of all, just looking at the comments as you and I are yelling at each other, people are very split. Half of them think I'm a moron. Half of them think you're a moron. Like Facebook user here says Easton has to fall in line or Austin will get rid of him. That's rich considering I've been screaming at Austin defending Will Levis for 2 months of my life. Now this is the game that was the line drawn in the sand by Austin that I had to pretend that I hated Levis all of a sudden. Wrong. Curtis does think that I'm fed up a little bit, but he likes my fire. Apparently Eduardo and I are finally watching the same game. But another Facebook user agrees with you and thinks that I'm going to get torn up if I don't agree with Austin. So really everybody just thinks I'm Austin's puppet, which is disrespectful. Not true. I'll say this, Sam. This is why we watch the tape, first of all, is because anecdotally in the moment of a game, we can feel a certain way. And then we change our opinion when we watch after the game. So perhaps when I go back tomorrow, I will issue an apology to Will Levis because I'll feel differently after watching the second half of the game.
I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
And I'm sure he's going to be up all night waiting for it. But just sitting watching the game in the moment, experiencing my emotions as I was taking in the game, that felt to me, what went through my mind at one point was he's going to finish this game with a QB rating of like 124. And tomorrow his PFF score is going to come out, and it's going to be like an all-time low 37.5 for Will Levis. And people are going to be enraged and say, PFF scores, oh, look at how stupid. And I'm going to quietly think that they're right. That's what went through my head. That this felt like a game that the box score for him, completely misleading. Again, it really is just the second half for me. Because in the first half, we came on the halftime show, and I said, you know what? I want to see more. I want to see more. And to your point, he didn't make the usual Will Levis mistakes. But if you'd have asked me at the beginning of the year, what's the number one thing about Will Levis that ticks you off and you think he has to get better at? My answer has always, and we haven't talked about it, unfortunately, my answer has always been this guy's mobility in the pocket, his awareness in the pocket stinks. And there's a reason why the 3 weeks previous to this game with Mason Rudolph under center, the Titans only allowed 5 sacks. And then today they more than matched that. That isn't just because the offensive line suddenly forgot how to play football today. That isn't just because they went up against a much better defensive front in LA than they'd previously played. Not true. A big part of that is because of Will Levis and the way he plays football. And it's a problem for him as an NFL quarterback. And I'm not sure it's going to get a whole lot better. And in this game was really my boiling point because it's been simmering for me. Maybe I hate the way he plays in the pocket. This was the moment where I just lost it. And so maybe I'm blinded by rage in the second half. I'll have to see. I'll have to rewatch the tape. I'll have to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can appreciate, like I said, noting that Levis's pocket mobility is a flaw at this point in time. I think it is something that he needs to improve on. I also think we can be relatively grounded about our standards for Will Levis and this idea that like he was not going to show up today and be a top 10 quarterback and light the world on fire and do everything perfectly. I think we expected that this was going to be a growing process for a quarterback that has played 13 career games in the NFL and is coming off of an injury and is trying to grow within Brian Callahan's offense. And what I saw today was a guy who made a lot of positive strides in the right direction. Because if you would have told anybody, if I would have asked you even earlier this year, if Will Levis would be really efficient, not make any mistakes with his arm, take score on 50% of the drives in the second half that he has. And then the biggest issue that you would have with him is that he took like 2 or 3 sacks that he shouldn't have taken, but none of them were consequential for serious yardage, because most of those sacks that people are upset about lost them 2 or 3 yards. If I told you that that was the biggest problem with Will Levis, I think you would be all aboard. I think you would be really excited about the potential to coach that out of him, about the potential to see that improve. So it is something that needs to improve.
I'm not unexcited by that potential. I find his play in the pocket in this game such a massive problem that it is single-handedly disqualifying for him as an NFL quarterback. Now, what you're saying is that hopefully they can just coach him to throw the ball faster and make decisions quicker. I'm not sure that they can, and I worry that if they do, he'll go back to making the mistakes that we've seen previously. That's my concern.
I think that's a fair concern. I don't think that it disqualifies him. I think that this was the crazy opposite side. I think this was the best Will Levis has been all year. I think that this was the best football he has played. This was the most efficient football. This was the best decision-making we have seen. It was the most accurate version of Will Levis throw as a passer. It was the smartest as Will Levis has been as a runner. And those are the things that we've looked for him to get better at. So we can argue all day about whether or not Will Levis is the future for the Titans at quarterback. I think based off the conversation we had earlier this week about how what Will Levis needs to do to be the Titans' future at quarterback is not put them in a position to replace him. And when they lose games like this and are 2-7 and are currently projected to pick 3rd overall in the NFL draft, he is on pace to be replaced right now. That is not a secret. That is absolutely where things are trending.
Yeah.
But I can also say I did not feel at all that this game was on Will Levis's back. I think he gave them a better shot of winning this game than any Titans quarterback probably has so far this year. Like, I think he managed really well. He was not detrimental to them, I don't believe. I think their problems were elsewhere. And quite honestly, I think fans in the chat, I think people watching this game, if your takeaway from this game is that Will Levis is the problem, I'm not putting you in this group. I'm not putting you in this group. I want to clarify before I say what I'm going to say.
All right.
If your take is that Will Levis is the problem from watching this game, you don't know what you're watching, man. Like you're just in denial about your.
You're lying to yourself. Yeah.
With your Levis hating glasses on, and it's fine. You don't have to be a super big fan of him. You don't have to believe he's the future of your team at quarterback. But he wasn't what lost you the football game today.
He was not the only thing that lost you the football game today. 100% agree. I don't think that he necessarily would have won despite some other things. But I can agree with you that he was not the number one problem here. And I've just been looking through the chat. We've got some super chats to get to here in a moment, but you're right that, like, I don't know. So what would you say is the number one thing that cost them the game, if not Will Levis? If you had to just name,
I think their defense was horrible in the second half.
Okay.
I think their defense showed no fight. Bad special teams, bad defensive effort in the second half. You cannot get, like, this was exactly what the Chargers wanted to do offensively, and you let them do it, which was long possessions with absolutely no stop. You got no sacks of Justin Herbert. You didn't create really any negative plays or tackles for loss. You never got them behind the sticks. You created no turnovers. Like, it was a bad defensive effort. It was, it masked a little bit in the first half by the fact that they were, I think they were lucky in the first half because Will Dissly dropped the ball that would have been a touchdown. He would have turned up field and scored a touchdown. He dropped it. Chargers had to settle for a field goal, but there was very little fight in this defense today.
Agreed.
And I think that ultimately it was going to be an impossible game for the Titans to win when the Chargers were eating up 7 minutes and scoring touchdowns. You cannot, it forces your offense to play perfect. And what we saw in the first half and at the beginning of the second half was, even when the Titans were playing well offensively, when they were doing things well, when the play calling was good and Will Levis was making his plays, when he wasn't getting sacked, when all of the stuff was sort of clicking, they were still losing the game because you were trading field goals for touchdowns and you were just putting yourself in a box where they had to play perfect. They didn't play the complementary football that we have talked so much about them needing to play. They couldn't answer a scoring drive with a stop. They couldn't answer a big play with another big play, or a special teams success. They didn't create a turnover. And that is ultimately what this team is. And I think this was just another example of, like you said, and Austin says this, they gave up 2 touchdown drives that combined 138 yards and took 11 and a half minutes off the clock. You just allowed the Chargers to kick your butt in time of possession. And it was very difficult for them to ever gain positive momentum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were on their heels all day. So we come around here at the end and agree that the defense was the number one most disappointing thing, the number one thing that probably cost them this game, which I'm glad we can finally say, to be honest, because the number one defense baloney has gotten grading in recent weeks. A couple of super chats here for us to address from Nathan Hayes, tank for Ward to Shador, Titans. Currently working hard on that. Don't you worry. Eduardo Flores, 7 sacks can't be fixed. Our backup averaged 1 a game. I mean, it can be fixed. It should not be an issue. The previous 3 games with Mason Rudolph, you had 5 in 3 games. So they're like the offensive line didn't suddenly forget how to pass protect in this game. There's an issue afoot. And I think a big part of it is Will Levis and the way that he operates in the pocket, as I've made clear. Mike Ribbles Burner says, if he forces a throw, he's a bad decision maker. If he holds the ball, he's indecisive. He scrambles, he's reckless. What about the line, wide receivers, and the coaching?
Obviously, super chat. I love this super chat.
I know you do. And it is reductive, right? Because if he forces throws, he's a bad decision maker. No, if you force throws and complete them, then you're a good decision maker because you're good at football and you can make tight window throws and make calculated decisions. The fact that you force throws and then they turn interceptions, that's what makes you a bad decision maker. If you hold on to the ball, you're indecisive. If you hold on to the ball, it's because you got people downfield that aren't open, but that's when good quarterbacks scramble or throw the ball away instead of taking sacks and forgetting that rushers exist behind them. And then if you scramble, you're reckless. Not if you slide, which he started to do better at mostly, and we're proud of him for doing so. So
Easton would like a quarterback. Just hot take. He would like a quarterback that forces throws down the field, but only only forces throws when they're complete. When nobody's open, he scrambles for positive yardage, is decisive with everything that he does. You're asking for a top Patrick 5 Mahomes. Quarterback in the league, aka Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. And that's great. It's great.
Yeah, call me crazy. I'd like a good quarterback. Is that it's supposed to be a diss? I want a good quarterback.
I think Mike Vrabel's Burner's problem here is that sort of standard, while true and correct, is also the standard for the elite of the elite quarterbacks in the league, of which don't exist very often and don't grow on trees.
I'm not asking you to do all of those things. I'm asking you to just not do all of them.
He does most of those things.
And this is why I have spent most of the year defending him. But today, most of the year he's been forcing throws, and that's been bad. He didn't do that today. Most of the year he's scrambled and been reckless. Today he didn't do that, and that was good. But he didn't hold on to the ball for a million years today, and that was very bad. So I'm calling it very bad in the postgame show. I can't win for losing on here. If I come on and defend Levis, I'm a Levis lover. If I come on and make fun of Levis, then I'm somebody earlier called me intellectually dishonest and a shock jock. Don't know why I must just be a glutton for punishment, the way that I am so intellectually dishonest that I come on here just looking for people to get mad at me because I really enjoy all the hate. Whatever, man. But I mean, to Mike Vrabel's Burner's point, we all understand and have said over and over and over for months and months and months that this is not a Will Levis problem. But need I remind you, I did not bring up Will Levis a single time in our show until 20 minutes in when you said, let's grade the quarterbacks. And then I graded the quarterback. That's all I'm saying.
I thought it was an extreme grade, though.
But I intentionally did not mention him. I mentioned all the other things about the team first, and then we talked about the quarterback. So I'm not blaming the quarterback for the issue. I was just in the quarterback segment giving my thoughts on the quarterback. That's all.
Okay.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's real quick review our X Golf X Factors. Gonna take this off the screen, Easton. Take off the Mike Vrabel's burner.
So
As great of a super chat as it is, take it off the screen here. X Golf X Factor. X Golf reinvented the player experience by creating the most accurate indoor golf simulators on the market today. It's the home of indoor golf at X Golf. You can go to the bar, get a drink, watch the game on the TV, and play some golf on the simulator. Advanced simulators, everything you need to make corrections to your swing and to your golf game at X Golf, Nashville, and now in Murfreesboro as well, the home of indoor golf. Let's go ahead, review our X Golf X Factors. Mine was Calvin Ridley, getting Calvin Ridley involved. I do think that was probably a correct take because that's where the Titans offense came from, was Calvin Ridley today. He did have a lot of success. That was one of the encouraging things. Levis throws 84 of his passing yards to Calvin Ridley and 2 touchdowns to Ridley as well. A lot of other stuff did not go well on offense. Can we talk about just how ineffective pretty much everybody else on their playmaker wise is for this team? Because it seems like it's Calvin Ridley and nobody else.
I think that's unfair to the running backs, who at one point were averaging like 8 yards a carry.
The running backs, pass catchers. Let me just put it that way.
Okay.
Nick Westbrook-Ikine is what Nick Westbrook-Ikine is, but
Steady Eddie.
Would love to have somebody else who can make an impact down the field other than Calvin Ridley.
You saw Bryce Oliver hauling a couple catches there at the end.
Somebody saying, the chat was saying Bryce Oliver needs more snaps. So,
he's the future. Get him in there.
Good for Bryce Oliver getting involved. So that was mine. Easton, you were all about stopping the Chargers' run game, something the Titans didn't do. 10 carries for 55 yards for Gus Edwards. J.K. Dobbins, 15 carries for 50 yards. So they did a decent job with Dobbins, just 3.3 yards per carry. But Gus Edwards got the better of them. And then Justin Herbert, 32 yards on the ground. Another good call by you on the BetMGM bet, where you wanted the quarterback over in rushing yards. That absolutely cashed. It actually cashed on the first drive of the day. And then, of course, salt in the wound. Hassan Haskins added a rushing touchdown as well at the goal line to, troll the Titans as the Chargers went ahead by 3 scores in the fourth quarter. So
after picking on Kenneth Murray and then later getting a couple sacks from Bud Dupree. I mean, just a humiliation match by the Chargers.
Yeah, I was waiting for the Elijah Molden interception in the fourth quarter.
I know, right?
Tap things off.
And if only Captain Hamstring was out there, that probably would have been a play for him too.
It really was a token Chargers game because Justin Herbert only completed 14 passes for 164 yards. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot, but he didn't make any mistakes and he did everything relatively well, did a nice job with his legs. So those are X factors. And like we said, same old story with this Titans team. We can debate all day about Will Levis. I'm sure we will for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks.
Until morale improves.
Until we get some more answers. I'm curious to go hear what Brian Callahan had to say about Will Levis's performance because we haven't been able to look at any of that yet on here with you. But keep it tuned in for A to Z Sports Primetime. Buck Rising will have that tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow evening for you. Actually, we're all over the place. I think I'm doing A to Z Sports Primetime tomorrow now that I think about it. Okay. So I'll be with you tomorrow night to recap more of this game and talk about what Brian Callahan says in his press conference tomorrow. Zach Bingham, Austin Stanley will be on the A to Z Sports Morning Show. And then Easton, you and I are about to churn out a bunch of written content, A2Zsports.com for all of that. Leave a like on the show before you go. And we will see you guys next time. Peace out.